For 4b, in order to maximize or minimize p, we need to first figure out where does p prime equal 0, or where is p prime undefined. Well, p prime is a fraction, so it'll equal 0 when the numerator is 0, so long as the bottom isn't also. That numerator will factor, by the way, pretty nicely into t plus 5 times t plus 1. The denominator will factor into t plus 6 and t plus 1. So p prime equals 0 whenever the numerator equals 0. That happens at x is negative 5. That's a critical number. If t is negative 5. If t is negative 1, both the top and the bottom will be 0, but that's still an undefined value, so we'll count that. And also if t is negative 6, the denominator will be 0, which makes p prime undefined as well. Now we don't have to so much worry about the negative 6 thing because the domain here is listed for all values greater than negative 6. So when I make my number line, I'm going to put negative 6 on the far left. I'll plot negative 5 because that's a critical number, and negative 1 because that's a critical number. And I'm going to test numbers from each section by plugging them into p prime to see if I get a positive or a negative result. For instance, if I plug in negative 5.5, my numerator, the first factor would be negative, the second factor would be negative, and a negative times a negative would give me a positive on top. On the bottom I would have a positive half times a negative number, which would give me a negative on the bottom. A positive over a negative gives me a negative overall. If I test a number like negative 2, that'll tell me about the middle section. Plugging negative 2 into the first factor gives me a positive result times a negative result, because negative 2 plus 1 is still negative. A positive times a negative gives me a negative overall on top. Plugging a negative 2 into the bottom gives me a positive factor here times a negative factor here, which is negative. And a negative over a negative gives you a positive overall answer. For the final interval, we could use 0. Plugging in 0 gives me 5 on top, that's positive, and 6 on bottom, that's positive. So I get a positive overall result. So, to justify my answers, I would say, look, p prime's going from negative to positive here. That means p is going from decreasing to increasing. And that's the only extreme we have because that's the only sign change in p prime. So p has a min, a relative min, at t equals negative 5 because p prime changes from negative to positive at t equals negative 5. That is our answer. The words around it are our justification.